Yeah, I want to go over something on motorcycles again, and I don't know. It depends on what people know. What I'm telling people right here is probably some simple stuff, but then again, I don't know if people know it. It's very easy to steal a bike. Very easy. This is why you should always use the fork lock, and I'm going to go over some things because I got some experience with this stuff, and when I was using this bike a lot, right? I was using it like a real rider. In other words, if there was a big rainstorm out, I'd be out there. If they had fires out there, like they had them in California, they had them out in Florida. You know, the roads were smoke filled. There was wind with cactuses blowing in the road. I'd be out riding. You know, I went to a lot of places, and a lot of times it wasn't like joyriding. I was going someplace, and it was 100, 200 miles or whatever. Not necessarily like around the block rides. So I'm going to tell you a few things. First off, it's real easy to steal these bikes. You know, I unbolted. You know, you don't need to unbolt this, but you could do it real easy with a couple alligator clips, but just for demonstration purposes. You got the red wire from coming off the battery on the back of the ignition, and if you look up here, you notice, you know, everything's off. You got the oil light off and all this crap. Neutral, things in neutral, right? All you got to do is go back here. It's freaking easy. You could do this on any Jap bike or anything, just if they got some fairing in the way. Just connect it back here, and you notice you got full ignition. The only thing you got to do then is if you get down here in the starter right here, right, you could do that, but you know, if you're really ripping it off, you're not going to be hitting the starter. You're going to be rolling it away from the place, find a little hill, bump start it out of second gear, and you're gone. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now, I'm going to go over some things on how to really what to watch for theft, because I think a lot of, well, there's weekend riders that just ride on a weekend with a club and they fucking go to a bar 10 miles away and they play Harley. One reason I kind of got out of this shit because I was getting disgusted with that shit. But you know, as far as jumping, it's real easy to do, right? Nothing to it. I mean, you don't have to take this off. I'm just showing it's the back of the ignition. It's so simple. You could do this on any Jap bike. Now, if you got it at home, I use the biggest chain there is. This thing, right? And on the fork lock, I use the biggest lock there is too. This thing, right? Just the biggest one that fits through there, and it's long enough. It's a little bit longer shank. I know there's one thing with the shank that's a little longer. Sometimes you can get in there. But you know what? If you got a torch, you're screwed, right? But I want to go over some things that people don't commonly understand. Yeah, so I was going over the chain. So you basically use the biggest lock you possibly can on it, and it fits through the fork and the biggest chain. Now, if you're traveling someplace, I'm going to have a solution for that because it's too big of a chain. On the back, well, this is not really what I consider super high security, but it's very close to, you know, the door, so I can hear anything. I like using, this is a Kryptonite Lock, and it uses these alarm type keys, and it's a very strong type of steel. And you can take this chain; it's not really super heavy, and you put it in the saddlebag. It's possible to do that. Now I want to talk about these Kryptonite locks. Like you look at this one. This is not a motorcycle lock. It's actually a bicycle lock, but it's lighter. You know, one of the problems is, you know, you can carry only so much stuff on a bike. I mean, you can't carry, you know, 1,000 pounds of chains. You know, that way more than the bike, right? So, but you know, I want to point out, even though these things are strong, just use your head that if you're going to be someplace, park the bike overnight or something, you probably do not want to rely on this lock too much. First off, they can screw with the bike itself, but number two, I don't know, when they first came out with these locks, even these bicycle locks, they used to offer $1,000 if if they showed the lock was broke. Except after a while, they said they didn't make that offer in New York City. And now it's because of the New York method, which is very simple. All you do is you get a big enough pipe that fits in here, wedges in here. So it could be like an 8-foot long pipe, and you just hang on that sucker. As long as you can get it in between the lock and wherever it's, you know, attached to. Just hang on that sucker, and it breaks the locking mechanism, and it pops open the lock. So, and you could do that pretty damn quick. So, you know, when you park someplace, use your head. You know, I've been lucky, but I do a lot of precautions, so that's part of my luck. All right. So normally I would do is I take this chain. It's not a lightweight chain actually, but it's kind of heavy. Sits in the saddlebag. And what I do a lot of times, it's a pain in the ass to hook it up too, because you have to wrap it around like a U and it cuts down the length. What I've done a lot was I use this cable lock. You know, it's from Kryptonite. It can be cut pretty easily with a pair of bolt cutters. But when you loop it through itself, you got a lot of length here. Because usually when you're trying to tie the bike to something, you got to get it around something. And, you know, it's just a loop, right? You can just make it any size. If it's a small pole, a big pole, telephone pole, you can just do that. And then I put this through the actual fork lock at the end. Now, you think that's not much? Just saved my bike several times from getting ripped off. I was parking it at work in daytime, you know, Winter Park, Florida, near Orlando, very business district, you know, corporate, all this bullshit, right? And people came by and just threw bikes in back of trucks. Mine still stayed there because I had this on it. That's the only thing that saved me. This is very easy to put in a saddlebag. It's not stupid. Now, I want to go over a couple other things. You know, on the top of the bike, I got this glass cap, and I don't know, it's an aftermarket gas tank, but what I do is, I had people fuck with my bike before. I don't know who the hell they were, but just some jerks do this on spite. Don't matter where the hell you're parked, it happens in the craziest place. They'll put some shit in your gas, and you'll be tearing down your motor for that, right? You know, to clean out all the crap. And what I do is, I use this Glock and gas cap. Yeah, usually if I park it someplace, you know, I'm kind of paranoid about this shit, and I found out I haven't had any problems for doing it this way. Another thing I do, I always take extra spark plugs, even used ones. I don't care to find. Another thing is I don't trust electronic ignitions. I was running these for a while. This is actually a point setup, and what it is 6-cylinder Chevy points from the old 6-cylinder Chevys they used to have in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, whatever the hell it was. This is the point setup. The plate goes in there, and you know you can use the test light, or you can actually just static time it and turn this plate just enough so these points crack open in here. And I'll show you that where that goes. Actually, it just goes under here. You know, here's where all the cams are and stuff like that. Just unscrew this. There's a rotor in here, and to tell you the truth, one time I had the rotor snap on me, which just like started wobbling. It cracked. The rotor itself cracked. Freaky thing, but you know, fortunately I made it back. You know, the engine was sputtering a little bit because the ignition wasn't working. But you know, if you have a problem with your ignition system, you know, electronic ignitions are very reliable. When they go, they just go. Points are 110% reliable. If you freaking change your points, clean them, set them, they always work. They never screw up. The only thing that's going to happen is the condenser. $2 if you keep an extra one on, and they don't break either. You get Blue Streak parts, good parts, standard motors parts and stuff, no problem. You just take this out and you put that whole assembly in there, and there's 2 wires. That's it. That's all you got to do. Now another thing I do, I always take this rain suit. It's like really lightweight, but you know, it's not just for rain. One of the things on bikes is called a little thing called hyperthermia. You know, it might feel like, oh, just a beautiful day out, you know, it's 65 degrees, and then you're on a highway and you go through pockets of cold air. It's like 50 and you got 50-mile-an-hour wind. You will freeze your ass off. And then when you don't like freeze, but what happens is it's enough to give you enough hyperthermia. So basically this is a rain suit, but it's a great wind blocker. And there's been times where it's been bad news getting back, you know, with the weather, not just because of rain, but because the temperature changed. And you know, I noticed this depends on where you are. I mean, on the East Coast it doesn't seem to change that much, but I noticed in California, damn man, it's like, you know, who turned off the big solar heater when the sun goes down, you know? And if you're out in the middle of the desert and you got a long ways to come back, you definitely want this stuff. Another thing I use, this is actually for bicycles, and I got a lot of tips from bicycles. This is basically like a Gore-Tex mask, and yeah, I know you look like a bandito, but you know, so what? And it's got Velcro, and I'll just wear this, right? And even if I got the full face helmet on with the chin thing, I got 3 helmets. One's a half helmet, one's a 3/4, one's a full face with a chin thing. For like, and the full face with the chin thing I used in the snow, you know, so you can handle like 40-degree weather and crap. It's pretty good, but this keeps a lot of air from blowing down between like your helmet and your jacket. I always use this thing. Now, the #1 theft deterrent actually is this. A lot of people don't screw with Harleys because they're afraid of the owner. That's really what it is. And you know, the one thing is that most people would say, you know, the fruits are riper fruits going for a Lexus with nice wheels on it and just taking the tires and the wheels or something. That's one reason a lot of people don't go for the Harleys, because I don't know, I would be very pissed off, and I'm totally paranoid when I park this thing someplace. I almost always, if it's going to be someplace and I don't see it and I can't just look out the window every 5 minutes, this thing goes on it. This thing goes on it too. And something else, you get flats, I always keep this, fix a flat. And I also have a little pump that's off a bicycle. I don't have it out here. It's only probably less than a foot long. It's designed to fill up bicycle tires. You'd have to pump that thing probably 2,000 times to fill up a motorcycle tire. But you know what? If you're stuck someplace and you got nowhere you're going, well, you got to remember, I was doing this before there were cell phones too. You know, you're out 300 miles into the desert, and you know, cell phones don't exist back in the 80s and stuff like that. In the 90s, I mean, I didn't have no cell phones back then, and you were totally on your own. But no AAA. So, and that could be the situation even today. The other thing I do all the time, I always take this stuff and I use the same beat up can, because it's like it fits in the bike, and it's metal. It's not plastic. It's, you know, they don't make these metal cans anymore. But I've had this in the saddlebag for 20 years. I just keep filling it up. And I always put a little Marvel Mystery Oil in the gas, because it saves the upper cylinders from wearing out, because you want to get as much life out of the bike as possible, and that's a very important attribute. The other thing is, I always keep these kind of bungee cords. I don't keep those freaking cloth ones. I think they're shit. And I use these rubber ones. They're very heavy duty. And I'll keep a few of those on hand. Now, as far as helmets, I've always used helmets on a motorcycle. Never, ever used them on a bicycle. And the reason I use helmets on a motorcycle is because, not that I have in my mind that stupid plastic thing is going to save my life. It's just that I've encountered so many rocks and bugs that hit my head that I want the helmet. It's like, it's really there for rocks and bugs. I don't think it's going to save my life. I mean, if you have an 18-wheeler and you got a plastic helmet, I mean, crap. I mean, what do you think that's going to do to you? For anything any good or not? Basically, I'll probably go on to some other videos about this stuff too, because, you know, I don't have all the answers, but I've been like a real rider for a number of years, and never played the game. You know, go to the bar and show my Harley, my tattoos, and talk shit. I mean, that crap turned me off so bad. It kind of got me away from the bike somewhat too. But I've noticed that a lot of people are broke today, and there's not too many of the glitzy Harleys around like they used to be. So it's making me feel better about this stuff. So I'm probably going to get back into it. I do love this shit. Got into it from mountain bikes and road bikes, the kind you pedal, because I like to exercise. But this thing is awesome. It's very practical. Remember, this is a good tip. If you want cheap security, use this cable lock. Use the gun. Use the fuel thing, because it's real easy to steal the bike. If you put that one hot wire on there, that jumper cable, hey, you just roll it away, bump start it, and the guy's gone. Your bike's gone. So, I mean, a lot of these people are very lackadaisical. I always did all kinds of chains and shit on this thing, and no matter where the hell I parked it. This cable thing is real easy. I always like using this a lot. Yeah, another thing is alarm systems. I don't know if the world's changed now, but I know years ago I tried about 3 different alarm systems. They go under the seat. They're supposed to handle all kinds of vibrations of bikes. And none of them lasted more than 2 months. You know, it's supposed to be like if you shake the bike. You're better off probably just getting a simple mercury switch, making your own crap that sounds as sewing a horn or some crap like that. And when the bike shakes, and then if the mercury switch breaks, try to rubber mount it, keep it in foam. Just replace it yourself with a switch underneath here. I mean, it's not much, but you can make something like that for $10. I found all the electronic gizmos with the remote, and every single one of those stupid things broke. Your best security is this heavy chain, but you know, if you're riding around, like I said, just use that little thin cable. Hey, they just really can't jump in there too fast and just throw the bike in the back of a truck. They'll take somebody else's. So that can help, believe me.